Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Todd Bartos.
Hey, good
What's
morning.
up, Todd?
You know,
Wow. So you're walking around up there with a gun.
you're sitting up there. It's just you've got a window that you're looking at, a big open window. The concrete yard is kind of shaped like it's just this big. I don't want to say square. I can't even tell you what the shape of it.
Like a V, kind
Kind
of,
of like a V
right?
type thing. Yeah, kind of like a V.
Yeah.
And there's a wall in the back. In the back corner, there's a toilet, and stuff like that. And that's it. There's nothing else out there.
What
So
kind of gun is it? A shotgun?
No. We had the Mini 14 up there for in case these guys, like if you had a guy even stomping somebody's head. So our use of force policy, if you're killing somebody and that guy's not able to defend himself, we can go to lethal force. Our number one weapon in the Department of Corrections, our go-to weapon is supposed to be the Mini 14. But again, that you're taking somebody's life, you're doing that. So a lot of guys will try to use the less lethal rounds first. So it's this big, launcher that they call grenade launcher looking thing, like what you see in the movies, and it could either shoot wooden baton rounds out, which they're wooden blocks, rubber blocks, and
Them
they
things
had ones
hurt.
that sting ball. Oh, dude, I've gotten hit with them. It hurts. Running into riots, I've gotten shot with those. It doesn't feel good. The sting balls were these round balls. They're 60 caliber balls. And when you shot somebody, it looked like you shot them with a shotgun. Because that was a direct round. You hit them. The other rounds, you're supposed to skip it off the ground. They're called knee knockers, but you know how that goes, man. You're shooting from an elevated position. People are moving around. There's guys that have had their, caps peeled back and all sorts of other shit from it.
It can kill you, right? The
It
less
can
lethal.
kill you. It can kill. I recently, since I've retired, somebody was just telling me there was a guy who recently, he's actually pretty much brain dead right now. They've got him in the hospital where he moved and took a shot to the head, and he's seized up and went out, and he's pretty much brain dead now because of it. I watched the guy's eye get blown out from one of those rounds. So yeah, it's no joke. I mean, and these guys will take it. And then the rule for them was, knowing that generally we'd go with the less lethal rounds, you'd have a guy. So when these guys are calculated, so when they're taking off on a dude, you've got guys watching. Hey man, that guy's not paying attention. Like if they knew you, they know. Hey man, Bartos is going to shoot. Bartos is watching. We got to do it anyways. You can't sit there and go, well, we got to wait till Bartos isn't on.
Now, would they stab him or would they just beat him? Like, would it be a knife involved?
Depends on what the guy's crime was. If it was hard candy or a checking. Some guys, they got away with, hey man, 2-on-1, you're going to get checked, you're going to get beat up. You weren't totally bad, you weren't in the hat, but you were getting punished, you were getting disciplined. And then there was hard candy where there was guys that they were going to kill. I mean, we had cases where one guy, the first one, the video of it, I wasn't there that day, but it was sick where they cut this dude, they cut his throat. The only thing that was keeping him alive was when he was down on the ground, his neck was basically constricting that thing. Guy came up for final blow and did a soccer kick to his head, and you could just see the blood shooting out. I mean, it was like a fountain, that head kick and then the blood. Guy gets up, crawls to the door. Remember how I told you about how you've got that triangle, made it into that triangle and dropped dead right there.
Blood loss, right?
We've had other ones where we've had to go out on the yard where, again, as said, you're not allowed to be around them when they're not cuffed up. We'd have to form a rescue triangle because they'd whack a dude. You tell them, hey, get off the yard. They're like, we ain't coming off the fucking yard. We got to save life. So now we have to form up in a team, a triangle, surround the body, grab that body, and walk him back off the yard.
Wow. So the people are cuffed up. They got to be cuffed up when they get out of their cell. What do you guys do? Walk them out to the yard, uncuff them, and push them out in the yard?
Well, like I said, we have that triangle. So there's one door that you put them into. They back up, food port, you uncuff them. They're in a little triangle round area. Round area. Guys sound like an idiot. Triangle area where they shape like a triangle. You strip them out, clear them for all their stuff, give them their things, and then there's another door, a second door to go out to the yard. So that way you're not having contact with them without handcuffs.
So there's 20 guys out there, all that are inside,
or more.
Wow.
Yeah, we've had some big yards. We had a couple times. I'm guaranteed there's probably 40 dudes out on the yard between Southerns and whites.
And sometimes it'll erupt. The whole yard's fighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, what do you do if there's multiple fights going on? Do you just start popping at people.
Yeah, you're trying to get them down. You're obviously the first thing is the verbal command to try to get them down. Some of
Is
them
there an
will.
alarm you hit?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, or somebody hits the alarm. You either hit the alarm or as soon as you yell, get down, somebody's hitting the alarm. Because if you're the gunner, man, you're trying to get into again, sanctity of life. You're somebody. It's a weird dynamic. That guy's killing somebody, so you're killing that person
To save the first
to
guy.
save the other guy. And sometimes, man, like I've said, and unfortunately, people move around. There's been times that the victim's the one that gets shot.
Oh,
It's
so
not
they're on
easy.
the ground getting beat
Well,
up.
yeah,
And
all these people say, well, why don't you shoot for the leg? Even cops out on the street. Do you ever shoot a gun? It's not that, it's not like it is in the movies. Everybody thinks it's like in the movies, man. It's not. I mean, is it a very accurate weapon? 100%. There's panic moving in. Your adrenaline's pumping. You're freaking the fuck out. Those guys are fighting. They're rolling all over the place. You finally pull that trigger.
moving all around, right?
Yeah.
And it's not right up close.
No, you're not. You're not walking up to someone putting it right to their head.
Yeah. Now, has there been a lot of shootings there with the real gun?
Oh yeah.
Have a lot of inmates been killed?
There's yeah. Not as much as you'd think, for a while there, but I mean, how many is too many? How many is a lot? You know what I mean? Just somebody's family that just one is too many or a lot,
Yeah.
But yeah, High Desert's a very violent place, and it was for a lot of years. That was people had okay, and again too, one of the things that made High Desert. There's a lot of factors that made High Desert as dangerous as it was. Okay, one, it was isolated away from the rest of the state. It's in the middle of fucking nowhere. So visits, hardly anybody got. So back when people would go on lockdown, I mean, I've seen certain gangs, groups on lockdown for a fucking entire year. Lockdown for a year, man.
Wow.
But they didn't care because, like, well, we don't have PIA, we don't have good jobs, we don't get our fucking visits up here. There's hardly any dope up here. Fuck, let's war. That was the cleanup prison. And like I said, because it was that way, a lot of prisons were sending us the people that they were having issues with. That makes for a deadly combination.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of guys that earned their bones up there. Look, that's where they made it. If you made it through there, everybody always wants to talk about Pelican Bay and, Salinas Valley
San
and
Quentin
Corcoran and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
We were a revolving door. Those guys that were at Pelican Bay, they were at High Desert. Those guys that were at San Quentin came to High Desert. Those guys that were at Corcoran came to fucking High Desert. It was a revolving door. These guys did their CDC tour.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's similar to the military, like
exactly how it is. Exactly,
right?
You're all around, and you got your thing. And these guys are coming up, and because there was heavies up there, these guys are coming up with kites. These guys are coming up with no good lists, bad news lists, all that kind of stuff. And man, they were looking for them. And now, like I said, with cell phones and shit, these guys are calling out. They
I've done interviews with people from their cell.
When we first started that, when I was on squad back in 2008, if we found 3 cell phones in a year, we thought we were broken. Dude, I guarantee you could go on any yard right now and find 30, 40 fucking phones.
You're like, security's broke. They're going to get in or whatever. They're getting out. Like,
yeah, we were fucking up. We're like, man, how are they beating us? How did they get that in? You know what I mean? Was the big question. Where do we stop the leak? Now, dude, it's flooded. I mean, I remember calling up other prisons saying, hey, I got a guy that, he's on his cell phone right now. He's in B2 220. And they're like, we don't care. He'll get another one. There's some prison like Solano. Those guys walk the yards with their phones. They walk. Remember when people had the stupid little Bluetooth fucking thing in their ear? These guys would be walking around on the yard with that in their ear. Wow. And again, if they're just talking about, hey, baby, I miss you. Okay, who gives a shit? But these guys can be orchestrating hits, drug deals, escapes. It can be bad, man. It can be bad. Technology. Now they gave them tablets. Okay, these guys, they're giving them tablets in prison. These guys know how to jailbreak that stuff. These guys are using their tablets to make phone calls and communicate that it's not being monitored.
And then once you find the phone though, you go through the call list, you can really get their contacts, figure it all out, right?
Yeah, but these guys, you have to have a warrant for it. It's not like you can just pick it up and start going through it. You actually have to get a warrant to go through that phone. There's legalities. We have rules that we got to play by.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than you really think. It's not like in the movies, like CSI, they pick it up and, oh, we got this. You know, you got to go through it. Now, once they go through it, yeah, that's incriminating shit. So later on, if we get you like I'm saying, the Aryan Brotherhood that are in that court shit right now in Sacramento for the RICO violations, they've got all those phone transcripts. They had those guys pegged. They had the phones bugged.
Yeah, they're screwed.
But
I
again,
don't think they really care, right? They
that's
got
just
life
it.
anyway.
That's just it. They're already doing life. They don't give a shit. And what do they got to lose? And they're gonna fucking do it again, because the reward to risk. What's the risk? Oh, you're gonna send me more time in prison? You can't send me to internment shoot because we don't have that anymore. I killed a dude for being a fucking rat. There's no death row. I'm going right back to the same prison where I was calling shots. Bye.
So I seen a big drug bust when I was in prison once.
Okay.
In the visiting room, the inmates had the people bringing in drugs, a lot of drugs, like big bundles of shit.
Right.
Like all kinds of ecstasy pills and cocaine. They would put it in the garbage in the visiting room.
And then the
And
porters would come through and get it.
yeah, and they set it up, and the guards got in trouble. All these people got arrested. There was like a big
Oh, were the
bust.
guards involved?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, the
shit.
guards were involved. They were letting it go through, and they all got busted. Has there ever been any busts like that going on when you were working there?
Yeah. We had a few cases where guys were bringing in. It was mainly the cell phones, that these guys were getting caught with. I didn't see a whole lot of staff members bringing in a lot of drugs, like a big thing. But there has been, obviously, there's been people that have brought it in. There was a guy. He was actually a free staff, a plumber that they had at High Desert that was shooting up heroin with the inmates.
What? Oh,
And
so he was coming in to do work in the
right,
prison, like a
he
regular.
he was a vocational teacher. He was the plumbing teacher. And how we busted him, ironically, was started. Okay, again, remember how I said snitches, right? We caught a guy coming out with tobacco because they go back to Vogue, and man, you're watching those guys. Those guys are stealing paint so they can get high off of it, or paint their cells, or do whatever they want, trying to get weapons stock in. I mean, the Vogue areas are very. You got guys back there working with woodworking. They're working with knives. They're working with blades. They're working with real fucking tools, right? So
Yeah.
man, it's just, you take that shit very seriously because they're going back out onto the yard, with that stuff, and you're trying to stop it. So we caught a guy bringing back tobacco. He had it in the collar of his jacket. Guy was kind of weak, and we're just like, man, where's this coming from? He goes, man, you don't even know half the problems that are going on back there. He ended up giving up that this free staff was bringing in heroin and shooting up heroin back with the fucking fellows back there.
Wow. So he ended up getting busted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he got sent to prison?
Yeah. And here's the thing with that, man. This guy had a great family, had a beautiful fucking home, had a skill. His family had a plumbing business in the local area. This guy had it made. This guy had every excuse in the world to be a success other than a drug addiction. And his wife was even like, man, I thought he was good. I thought he was over it. And that drug addiction, man, it ruins people. It makes people make the worst decisions. You can see great people that are hardworking, good individuals, and when they get strung out on that drugs, they give up their families, their livelihood, themselves, their own pride. Like we talked earlier about these guys starting doing tricks and shit. You know what I mean? They're giving up themselves for that drug. That drug becomes the master of puppets.
What's the craziest weapons you have found? I've heard stories of guns being in prison, bullets.
Mm-hmm.
What's the
Zip guns.
craziest things you
Zip
found?
guns. We had a guy. I didn't see it. It was right before I got to New Folsom, but there was a guy who was in the brand, and he had made a zip gun and actually shot it through the cell window at the chief deputy warden when they were coming up to extract him, and they actually had to bust out the back window of the cell, sir, and have to throw flashbangs in to get that dude out because we didn't know how many shots he had.
So
It was
he
one
used
shot.
a real bullet, right?
He made a bullet. Yeah, I can't
He
even tell you.
made a bullet.
Yeah, well, used a ball bearing.
Oh shit!
Ball bearing and match heads, and was able to fire it off.
That's insane.
These guys, man, again, these guys have skills to make shit. The weapons, man. Okay, I have real tools. There's times I'm trying to cut through metal and shit with the right tool, and I'm frustrated and damn near throwing the thing down because I can't get through. These guys are cutting through chain link fence with fucking dental floss and cleanser.
Yeah.
You know, they talk about soft. I go, I've never heard of soft metal. To me is like a fucking aluminum can. Okay, I can cut through this. These guys are cutting through bunks, sheet metal. You know, sheet pans were the great weapons. So these guys are breaking down pieces of the carts the food carts, you know, and making Bonnaroo weapons on it. And man, they're fucking bone crushers. One guy, we're talking about AdSeg and going back to the hole and getting checked and your own people. There was a guy that was an amazing weapon maker, and he'd actually autograph his own weapons because they were that badass. I mean, it looked like something you would buy in a fucking knife store. When he went back to the hole, he was no good. They stabbed him with one of his own weapons.
Oh man, how ironic is that? It's like selling someone a gun and getting shot with your own gun.
With it. Yeah, Smith and Wesson getting shot by one of his own guns.
Yeah, it's wild. Have you seen spears and things like that and different kind of things?
Yeah, we didn't have that much of that because our prison, at High Desert, the doors were the big solid doors. And to try to get through, it'd have to be through the food port, so it'd be hard. So I didn't really get to that. That's more like the other prisons where they had the mesh, and they would make like the darts and the spears and slingshot type stuff. You know, I mean, we give them. You know, it's so funny that they so worry about certain things. Man, we're selling them stuff. These guys, the weapons that they can make you out of a fucking shampoo bottle.